Terrific. Welcome, everybody. My name is Allison McNeil, and on behalf of Helen Conroy and the rest of the Thinking Moms Revolution, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Mitochondrial Support, How and Why ATP Pushes Toxins Out. We have a giveaway today, a package of MitoMelts to one live audience member. And Helen, you're going to pick an audience member for me and tell me who that is. And while she's doing that, I'm going to tell you that Helen is completely addicted to the stuff and was just talking me into getting some myself as we were getting ready for today's broadcast.
The winner is Christy Deems.
Christy Deems! All right. Hi, Christy. Okay, so in today's webinar, Charles Barker will discuss the connection to copper toxicity in our drinking water and in dietary supplements. We know the life force in our body boils down to a currency called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. In order for our cells to produce ATP, our body requires oxygen, nutrition, and electrons. We breathe air for oxygen and eat food for nutrition, but we depend on our cells for electrons. When the cells become compromised, what can we do? In this webinar, Charles Barker will tell us one way to improve cell respiration with molecular electron nutrition. He will discuss MitoSynergy, a one-of-a-kind dietary supplement that helps the body help itself by bringing a revolutionary copper chelate that has the ability to feed and charge the mitochondria. Incidentally, we have a few TMR moms who have been using these products for over a year, and they're seeing really great things. Charles Barker is the CEO of MitoSynergy, a company he founded after researching unconventional ways to help improve the condition of his nephew who had been paralyzed in an accident. The creation of MitoSynergy led him to his passion of developing cutting-edge nutrition and bringing products that helped his family to the general public. As the inventor of several promising compounds, Charles believes these new compounds will change the way we view the bioavailability and use of minerals. He received his college education in Tucson, Arizona, and is certified in the microscopic live blood audit of enzyme potential. He is a live blood consultant, professional hydrocolon therapist, expert in biological flow systems, auditing concepts and methodologies for practical application. Cyto, biofeedback, he is EVOX certified and an advanced practitioner in ourcoalition.org and applied microscopic technology for health, education, and audit processes. Woo! His passion is trying to copy Mother Nature in mineral nutrition. He enjoys spending time in his laboratory mimicking Mother Nature's compounds and then watching the compounds as they are introduced to living cells. Charles presented at Autism One in Chicago this past May, and many of the thinking moms came away from his talk really excited to try MitoSynergy products both on their children with autism but also on themselves. Charles is going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we will have approximately 20 minutes for questions. You may type your questions throughout the presentation, and Charles will take them at the end of his talk. So welcome, Charles, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your talk today.
Thank you for having me. So this is my first webinar with this particular platforms. I'm assuming if I hit my right key, I can start to move slides here in this PowerPoint. I'm gonna try.
Yeah, go ahead and try it.
Oh, I see. There's a little arrow right on it now. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll just start off. I'll try to be super fast here because this is the only slide about me. Just in a nutshell, like she said, my nephew was injured. It's really interesting. You know, I'm a spiritual man. I've always give thanks to God every morning, every evening. I always in the morning give thanks for filling me with everything He knows I need most. And it's crazy. After my nephew got injured, I started visualizing strands of copper going up and down his spine. I just knew copper was what he needed for his recovery. A long story short, I heard about some copper going on in Egypt. And so without hesitation, copper, I went there and I started to learn a lot about copper. So that's kind of what got me started in copper. And now I feel like because I was fresh eyes and from the outside looking in, I know this is a big statement, but I feel like I cracked the code to copper, and I honestly believe copper is just so misunderstood. and it's so important for our body, and we're going to get into all that. But once we understand how it's misunderstood and how it's so important for us, this could be life-changing for a lot of people. Okay, so moving right along. Interesting. Oh, there they are. Okay. So what we're going to cover, we're going to go over cell respiration. So cell respiration is how we make ATP, and we're not going to go deep into it. We're going to look at it from, say, 10,000 feet. And then we're going to cover active versus passive transport. So what that is actually is there's two ways to come in and out of a human cell. And this is a eukaryotic cell, so for stuff to come in and for stuff to come out, it requires active and passive transport. So we're going to cover that. Then we're going to cover my favorite subject, copper fundamentals. Once we have a fundamental understanding of cell respiration, active versus passive transport, and then copper fundamentals, we'll be able to get into what I believe we're pioneering in what we call molecular electron nutrition. Okay, and then once we get into that, we're going to dive in really deep, and we're going to get into complex 4, Cytochrome C of the mitochondria, and this is where it kind of connects all the dots. Okay, so cell respiration. First of all, in a nutshell, are we able to see my cursor on the screen? I'll assume we are. Okay, if you have everything's working perfect, and you have full cell respiration, textbook amount of adenosine triphosphate made is 38 of them. So you're producing 38 from each molecule of glucose. So what we need to understand, and the main thing that I want to brainwash in cell respiration, and if anybody's taking notes, this is what we need to write down: 2,2,34. 2,2,34. So the first 2, ATP, is made in glycolysis. Now glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm of the cell. It doesn't actually happen in the mitochondria, and that's a big confusion a lot of people first have. So in the cytoplasm, not in the little mitochondria itself, but in the cytoplasm of the cell, glycolysis happens. And it creates you 2 ATP, and that's really all we need to take away from glycolysis. There's a lot more going on. And if your cell is toxic, glycolysis could certainly be compromised. So if outside in your cytoplasm of your cell is toxic, you could be broken right there. But moving along. Can find my little air there. Okay. So getting into the Krebs cycle. So Krebs basically takes the byproduct of glycolysis, because in glycolysis we make pyruvate and it turns into acetyl-CoA as it goes into the Krebs cycle. Now the Krebs cycle again only makes 2 ATP. So back to the 2,2,34. 2 from glycolysis, 2 from the Krebs cycle, our citric acid cycle, the exact same thing, just different name for the same thing. The yield is 2 ATP. So the byproduct from glycolysis goes into the byproduct of the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, where you get 2 ATP. Now, if everything's working perfectly fine, we have achieved 4 ATP as an excess. That's what we get as our currency, and now we're ready for the electron transport chain. My whole focus has been the electron transport chain since day one, basically. Some of my background is I was raised with a master mechanic, and my father taught me a long time ago how to diagnose and work on cars. When you do that, when you work on a car, you always start at the cylinder of the car, and the cylinder is basically the same as the mitochondria, because in the cylinder of a car is where we convert our fuel to energy, and in a mitochondria is where we convert our fuel to energy. And it's really interesting how they both kind of require the same basic 3 things. They require electrons, they require fuel, and they require oxygen. And as long as they have all 3 of those things, everything's working great. So I really focused in on the electron transport chain and working my way backwards. And why is the electron transport chain so important? 34. 34 ATP. I mean, as soon as we say 2,2,34, it doesn't take long to figure out, well, if ATP is the source of everything and makes us live, wouldn't we want our electron transport chain to be really healthy and working well? And it'd be quite obvious if we have a compromised electron transport chain that we're going to have a compromised body. Everything's going to be compromised, right? If our engine's running off of 2 cylinders instead of 8, we have a huge issue. So electron transport chain, so that's all we're going to cover for the moment on cell respiration. So again, the takeaway from cell respiration, 2-2-34. 2 ATP out of glycolysis, 2 ATP out of Krebs, or citric acid cycle, same thing, and 34 ATP from electron transport chain. The first 2 factories are just setting up the 3rd factory. Okay. So to get back into, now we're going to cover passive versus active transport. Now this automation isn't working here, but what we have to understand is there's basically 2 ways for things that come in and out of our cell membrane. It gets a lot more complicated, and again, this is at 10,000 feet looking down, but if we want to narrow it down to 2 ways, one way is considered passive transport. Passive transport does not require adenosine triphosphate. There is no currency of ATP needed for passive transport. So an example of what comes in and out of the cells through passive transport would be like oxygen and water. That can come in and out of the cell, no energy required, okay? Now, active transport, that's a whole different story. Active transport requires ATP. An example of what comes in and out of the cells with active transport, nutrition, toxins, neurotransmitters. So as we can start to say, wow, we're having these problems, are there toxins stuck in the cell? Well, we need ATP. We need ATP from within that cell to stimulate one of these things called a channel protein. And basically, ATP means it has 3 phosphates, okay? And when you have active transport, it connects, it loses one of the phosphates, and it makes it go whoop. And that's how it works. It's just a little channel protein, and it's how things come in and out. But it requires ATP to do that. And then the byproduct is ADP, the phosphate gets burnt off, and that's how you get your energy. But the takeaway from active versus passive transport is that we have to understand the important stuff. Well, not to say water and oxygen are important, but neurotransmissions, toxins, nutrition require ATP. Okay? So we know that the bulk of the ATP is made in an electron transport chain, and we know our cells need ATP to help themselves. So now let's get into copper. Again, I just want to say one more time, I honestly believe copper is the most understood mineral that we put in our body that I know of to this day. And it's one of the most imperative minerals we put in our body. So when you look at copper, it comes in 3 oxidative states. And basically copper 0, all minerals come in that 0 oxidative state. And that basically means, you know, it has 29 protons, 29 electrons. Copper is number 29 on the periodic table. And for those that don't have the chemistry, every one of those numbers just represent 1 more proton, 1 more electron, and every time we gain an electron and a proton, we have a new element. So copper is number 29, therefore it has 29 protons and 29 electrons. Now there's only 2 elements in the whole universe that come in the oxidative states of 2-1. Copper is one of them. They come in an oxidative state of 2-1. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that when something is completely oxidized and it's copper, it's now copper 2. It's lost 2 electrons. Because copper has the ability to lose 2 electrons, or it has the ability to lose 1 electron. Hence copper 1, copper 2. So a completely oxidized piece of copper is copper 2. That would be like blue copper or green copper. It's completely oxidized. Copper 2 is basically what we've been giving ourselves in dietary supplements, a completely corroded metal. It's very interesting. Industry standard across the board, when you start to look at all these different coppers they put in our dietary supplements, they're all completely oxidized. It's all copper 2. Okay? So, again, to recap on that, copper being number 29 on the periodic table. 29 protons, 29 electrons. And here we go. So this is your different oxidative states. Now notice copper, out of all these, there's only one other element that carries a 1,2 oxidative state. And I'll have to say that's another very misunderstood one, which is Hg, which is mercury. Yeah, interesting, right? If we understood mercury, we'd never be putting it in our body. And if we really understood copper, we'd never be taking oxidized copper, number one. And number two, we'd normally be supplementing zinc when we're supplementing copper, but never together. It is my recommendation when supplementing copper, you take your copper first thing in the morning, first thing in the day, and later in the day you take your zinc. Copper and balance are imperative for each other, but they also neutralize each other. So you never want to take them both at the same time, but if you're taking one or the other, I highly recommend you're taking the other. I see a lot of people on certain protocol where they're just taking zinc, and they're not taking copper with the zinc, and I'm just going, it makes no sense to me, because all it's doing is stopping the absorption of whatever proper copper they have in their body, what little they have, and so I don't agree with the protocol of just zinc from my perspective. Okay, now we get to have a lot of fun. We're going to really jump into this copper thing, and we're going to get kind of deep. I'm going to have to focus on time here. So I have to use the cam in my computer instead of my normal webcam for this, so I apologize for the spinning of stuff. I have to basically point this camera at my desk. I'm going to turn on a little bit of a brighter light. I'm going to wedge it with a book and see if we can make this happen. This is a great book, by the way. Highly recommend it to everybody. It just puts all the pieces together. Okay. Hoping this all works out. All right. As long as my little contraption stays there, we'll be fine. Okay. So here we have a white piece of paper. And what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to put some of the industry standard copper on here. So this is a copper amino acid chelate. So we're going to take a little out of this here bag, and we're going to dump it on here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add water. Now, as most of us know, our bodies consist of a lot of water. Okay. So now what's interesting about the type of copper that they put in our dietary supplements, watch what happens with the water. This is just a regular pipette and tap water. It's coming out of a flask. So the term hydroscopic and hydrophobic, scopic is when something likes water, and phobic is when something doesn't like water. Notice what happens with the water as soon as it splashes on here. See how it just kind of rolls off to the side there? So water just rolls right off that copper. It doesn't want to absorb in there. In order to mix this copper, I have to really saturate it. See how it pushes away? And we're going to go ahead and let this dry. Now what's going to happen when this particular copper dries, it's not going to change color. It's going to become really gritty, like a 60 grit sandpaper. So we'll just go ahead and leave that one there. Now we're going to show you some proper copper. So this is the copper, this next copper that we're going to look at next to this. This is the copper that we use in all of our powder MitoSynergy products. Jar's a little too big to show you in the camera, wedged in between the book and the desk. There you go. Now the first thing that I find interesting about these two colors of copper, copper 1, copper 2 here. So copper 1 has 28 electrons, 29 protons. Copper 2 has 27 electrons, 29 protons, okay? So here, we still have copper with an electron to donate, okay? Now what happens when we drop water on here? Let's get a new pipette. Notice the difference of the reaction to the water. Notice it just absorbed right in there. Didn't roll off. Just sucks right into it. Okay. Now, what you're going to find very interesting about proper copper, in my opinion, is that this is all going to turn blue. Before this webinar is over, this will all change colors right before your eyes. The definition of something oxidizing, the definition of oxidization is to release of electrons. The definition of the opposite of oxidization is something to reduce, which means it would steal electrons. So what's going to end up happening here is this copper is going to become smooth as my baby skin, and this is again going to be coarse, and this is going to change colors. Now I can kind of see if I can bring this up a little closer to the camera, and we're going to circle back to this in a little bit, but I can kind of see that slight color change right there? Oh, excuse me just for a second. There we go. See that slight color change? So that's beginning to happen. That's what's supposed to happen in our body. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to have to take off my wedge contraption and flip my computer back over. Okay. We're having fun now. Now, I just clearly demonstrated the difference between copper 1 and copper 2. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Here's what happens in Mother Nature. Copper 0, the hard copper mineral, solid copper gets rained on. Mother Nature oxidizes it. When copper oxidizes, it's able to go to liquid. That liquid copper goes into the root system, the copper 2. The root and microorganism bring it up to the plant, where the plant reduces it and makes it copper 1. Now, I find that very interesting that the copper we're eating in plants has an electron to donate, and it's copper 1. Here's a couple great references. These back up everything I'm saying. So far, when I start to get into theory, I'll make sure to let you know it's my theory, but so far everything is just straight factual, okay? Okay. So again, like I was saying, it just is just a couple great references. I think I'm finally beginning to learn how to use this. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, now this is where it gets even more interesting, in my opinion. In order for not all, but most copper chaperones, and what is a copper chaperone? A copper chaperone is a copper-carrying protein. Copper-carrying protein, what it is able to bind to copper, so we can bring it and distribute it to wherever it needs to bring it throughout the body. Now, what's really interesting is copper chaperones can only bind to copper 1. Isn't that interesting? 28 electrons, 29 protons. So, quick recap. Plants turn copper 2 into copper 1. They give our body copper 1, and our cells, in order for the chaperone to grab to it, has to be copper 1. So then I have to sit here and scratch our heads. Where does copper 2 fit in the picture? And another great question is, keep in consideration, we're never going to eat copper 0. That's a hard metal. We'd never do it. It makes no sense. So we had a 50-50 chance here on Earth with copper, right? It was either copper 2 or copper 1 for our dietary supplements. We had a 50-50 chance. Well, we went with copper 2. It was a no-brainer. Why? The cost to make a kilo of proper copper is $8,000. A cost to make a kilo of industry standard copper is $20. So I could understand why they went the cheap route. But anyone who understands metabolic and all these other things that are going on in people's body realize copper's a big mess. Copper's not right in most people. So if copper's not right in most people, and we started off with copper 2, wouldn't that be kind of a clear indication saying, hey, maybe we're using the wrong oxidative state of copper? Now look at this copper. There you go. See that color change? That color change, that's what helps the body help itself. That's copper the way the body's meant to have it, wants to have it. Now, another interesting thing about copper is here we have an empty flask. I'm going to show you some copper 1 oxide, okay? This is copper 1 oxide. Copper 1 oxide, when mixed with water, okay, so we're putting it in a flask, copper 1 oxide. Let's grab another pipette. Watch what happens when I mix a copper 1 with water. Do you see that? How it's not mixing with water. See the suspension? It's creating the suspension. It's not dissolving. There's big old chunks of stuff. You see there's clear liquid and copper. Okay? So copper 1 won't go to liquid. It's in a plant. It's something we eat, we chew on. But now copper 2, that's a different story. And this is real important to understand. So in the beginning when I was thinking, oh, it goes to liquid, that's a good thing. Is it? So now watch what happens to copper 2 when you put liquid to it. And again, this is the kind of copper that's in our industry standard. Okay? So there's some copper. Watch this. Do you see that? You now have blue liquid. Aquarius. Liquid copper. Water. Now remember, passive versus active transport. How is copper going to get in a cell when it doesn't have a chaperone? How is copper going to get and toxify our cells? How does it get in there in the first place if it doesn't have a chaperone? It's not binding to what it needs to bind to get in there. How's it getting in there? Is your brain telling you that it's going in there through passive transport because it's connecting to water and it's getting in the cell? How it's not supposed to get in there? That's correct. It's getting into the cell as copper 2 and it's getting stuck in the cell as copper 2 because the cells don't understand what to do with this. The cells were designed for copper 1 to go into here and turn into copper 2 in here, and then they have a way out. They weren't designed to come in here as copper 2 and try to turn into copper 1. The chaperones aren't here. Our cells become confused when we do that. I don't think that can make it any clearer than that. Okay, so what is molecular electron nutrition? In a nutshell, molecular electron nutrition is the ability to feed your body's electrons where your body needs them. The ability to feed your body electrons where your body needs them. Okay, so a quick recap, and then we're going to dig into Cytochrome C, and we're really getting to the good stuff here. As you can tell, this gets me a little excited. I'm sorry, I live, eat, drink, and breathe this stuff every day. Okay, so quick recap. Cell respiration, 2234. All ATP is coming from the 34. Copper is copper 1 in plants. Copper is copper 1 to get into our cells. Okay. Now let's get into the electron transport chain, where the bulk of ATP is made, where that 34 number comes from. There's 4 complexes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Your 4th complex in the electron transport chain is called Cytochrome C, or complex 4. Okay. Now what's really interesting about Cytochrome C, complex 4, is, to me, this is like the spark plug, right connected to the cylinder of the car. Because where that ATP comes from, that pop, that's the cylinder. And the very last enzyme in complex 4, Cytochrome C, requires proper copper. The very last enzyme, complex 4, Cytochrome C, requires proper copper. And without Cytochrome C, without complex 4, you don't have electron transport chain. And without electron transport chain, you're stuck. Your cells are stuck in survival mode. They're running off glycolysis and Krebs, maybe, but basically, you know, if that cell has toxins in it, it can't let them go. If there's neurotransmissions that need to go through there, they can't get through there. If there's nutrition that cell needs to absorb, it can't absorb that nutrition. Everything, it's a complete breakdown. And just to hit you again, Right there it is. Cu stands for copper. This is Cytochrome C. This is complex 4. And the last mineral, where all the action happens, where the big pop is, where there's 4 electrons being used, where all the cell respiration is really coming from is right here. If you don't have copper homeostasis, if you don't have copper 1 right here, if your cell is copper deficient, you don't have cytochrome C. You're compromised. You're struggling. Now toxins stick in your body. Now things that affect other people, that don't affect other people, only affect you. You know, we have to scratch our heads. Why is it that somebody can be toxified with something, they have a huge reaction to it, and other people can be toxified with something, they have no reaction to it? Well, if your body's doing what it's supposed to be doing, maybe that's a problem. So I do believe copper is the major issue. Now, the mineral that I'm diving into next, and I'm already kind of diving into, is Fe, iron. Okay, I think that's probably the second misunderstood. And as I'm digging into it, that one's becoming a little bit obvious too. But I don't want to get too deep into that yet. But why iron? Because it's the very next mineral up from the electron transport chain. So all we have to do is work ourselves backwards from the electron transport chain, study all the minerals that are needed, study them in plants. We have to study in plants. When we make a copper, when I do my chemistry, all I do is I pretend like I'm in a plant. And my arms can only grab from the materials I can use in my chemistry is only from the plant. Only thing I can do is change the process. I can't add, like, you know, methyl or DMF or all these other harsh things they use when they start making stuff. I'm only going to grab what's in the plant, and I'm only going to manipulate the process. So, again, quick recap on everything. So now we can leave this really owning this. So number 1, cell respiration is 2,2,34. Most of the ATP is made in the electron transport chain. Copper is copper 2 in soil. Becomes copper 1 into the plant. Our bodies can only bind to copper 1. Copper 2, like in drinking water, because it leached in there, can get into our cells through passive transport. Copper 1 can't, because it needs to bind to something. See the separate liquids there? Copper 1 cannot go to liquid. Okay? I've talked to a lot of doctors, and they all tell me, oh, copper 2, copper 1 doesn't make a difference. Well, I have to beg to differ. Do you have any idea how hard the chemistry is to take something from copper 2 to copper 1 and not make it toxic? And that's the key. They make it go from copper 2, copper 1 and not make it toxic. Any chemist can do it, but not very many can do it and not make it toxic. That's what separates. So anyways, there's some great references in here. Now, this is an example of electron nutrition. Now, what I find very interesting, this is our human study on 58 subjects we did out of Canada. I always tell everybody, hands down, the best nutrition is water. The best medicine is sleep, period. Sleep and water, there's nothing better for your body. I mean, those are the, I don't care what dietary supplements you're taking, what food you're eating. Without water, it's all worthless, okay? So in our, what I really like about our human study is we spent a lot of money to prove that water is very important. And the way I say this is, if you take a look at what we did was we measured the ATP, basically the cell respiration from blood platelets. You basically have 3 kinds of blood cells. You have white blood cells, and you have red blood cells. You know, your white blood cells are your immune system. Your red blood cells carry your iron and oxygen, and your platelets, you know, they have a little, and they clog. They make it so when you get cut that you don't bleed to death, right? So red blood cells do not have mitochondria, but platelets and white blood cells do have mitochondria. And so we're able to measure by the byproducts cell respiration. And simply by making our subjects consume 8 glasses of water a day, they're across the board, they went up 21% in cell respiration just by drinking water. In hindsight, and the next time we do a study, we're going to make sure that they drink and get properly hydrated 1 month prior to starting the study. But I just think that's so cool to prove that water is that powerful. Then the next thing is, We did have a significant increase, though, over the ones that took water and copper. You know, close to a 15% jump right there. And when you look at our study overall, on our question-based impact, we changed people's lives by 51%. We had a change of 51% on those who were over placebo on quality of life. And that's huge for a study that short, only 30 days, and a study for 30 people. Now, to get back into this copper thing a little bit, not only is copper so important for the electron transport chain, Cytochrome C complex 4, but when this all happens and we're using this, we're creating oxygen free radicals. In order for an oxygen free radical to be neutralized, guess what it takes? Copper. These look like our copper molecules that we're working with, and I find it very interesting when you dig back and forth here, how much our molecule in our MitoSynergy mimics the copper molecule of sod. You see that? So when you start getting bio-like or bioidentical to Mother Nature, then we know we're putting in our body what it belongs. And I'm just going to keep going back. See that? Every time one of those little specks change colors and it releases an electron, that is electron nutrition. That is what our bodies are needing. See the difference? Pretty cool. Okay. So in summary and quick recap, copper is necessary to assemble cytochrome C. Without cytochrome C, we don't have ATP. Copper is necessary for free radicals of oxygen. I mean, oxygen can be just as damaging as it can be helpful if it's a free radical. You know, remember, the definition of a free radical is missing one electron. So when something's missing one electron, it's now a free radical, right? So just think about this for a second, just to go back to the copper 1, copper 2 debate. If I put copper 2 in my body, and it has 27 electrons and 29 protons, can it oxidize or can it reduce? It can only reduce. It can only steal an electron from someplace. So, therefore, hence, it's going to create a free radical. It's going to have to. It's going to have to do something bad in order to convert it so your body can process it. But more than likely, it's just going to get stuck in the cell. It's just going to go to Aquarius, get stuck in some cell, and now you have a copper toxic cell. If you take the wrong copper, it has already been proven that it has the opposite effect on superoxide dismutase. So, hands down, hopefully we all understand how important copper is. We understand that every single cell of our body requires proper copper, and then we can begin to understand that when we take the wrong form of copper, things aren't happening right. I mean, who would take that corroded copper, get a whole bunch of this blue stuff, and then chug it? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Now, I have done that just in my own little experimentations, and I threw it all up immediately. It caused immediate nausea, and it was so. Anyways, that's it for this part of the presentation. We have 29 minutes to do questions and answers, and that is actually my favorite part of all this. So let's jump into the questions and answers. It looks like someone's taking over this computer. Is that right? Hi.
Hi, Charles. So Helen's got a big list of questions, I think, that we're going to get going on, and I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't typed your questions in yet, please to do it now, because this is your chance, and we would really love to have your questions are probably other people's questions, so go ahead and ask them, because everyone will benefit. All right, so Helen, I'm going to take myself back off again and let you and Charles get started, okay?
Sounds good. Okay. The first question we have is if you could talk about pyroluria, and I'm guessing that's a copper reaction. So how would you include copper if you have pyroluria? Is this copper like different? Is it going to help, or?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that first question, and then, you know, I wanted to do a quick, I wanted to go over my product line really fast, although I'm really more here to educate, but people keep asking me, like, why do I take this one, or what's this one, and everyone's really confused on it, so I think this would be a good opportunity to clear that up as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
But yes, proper copper will help bring balance to your copper-zinc ratios, and if you are experiencing that, again, I think it's not only important that you are taking copper, but you're also taking zinc. and that you're taking a good form of zinc, and that you take your zinc 2 or more hours after you take your copper. So I definitely think helping the body help itself, we can bring that back to balance. And so then we'll do your next question, but first I'm going to just go through my line really fast. Is that okay,
Okay.
Ellen?
Yeah, that's great. We'd love to hear that.
Okay, so the first one I want to go over is MitoSynergy Original. Now, what we have to understand, when we first started MitoSynergy, we were a one-product company. And so this is all we had. We had one product. We basically have kind of a generic Mito cocktail in here with the proper copper. It's an all-in-one supplement. And then what we learned in time was that copper actually works better when you take less with it. Copper works better all by itself. And I think one of the reasons that is that copper is so unique in its oxidative state. So this isn't normally the product that I recommend, but if you're trying to keep it simple, you're trying to do an all-in-one, it's a good start. If you're trying to say, I want some Mito cocktail and I don't want to buy anything else, I don't want to think about it, I just want one supplement and keep it simple, this might be a good all-around one. The only reason it's still in our product line is every time we try to remove it, my phone blows up, my email blows up, and I can feel my clients' claws coming through their phone, and they're grabbing me and telling me they put it back on the market or they're going to kill me. So I'll never take this off the market. Nobody ever panic. If I could go back in time, I would have formulated it different. We have evolved from here. So MitoSynergy Original will always stay the same. So it's basically a Mito cocktail with regular B12 and regular folic acid. Then we evolved to Mito Activator. So Mito Activator is just basically the copper by itself. This seems to be the direction that's been best for most people because everyone's chemistry and diet and lifestyle is so unique. Hey, you go pick your own supplements. You go decide what's best for you. All I'm providing you is the proper copper and Mito Activator. This is a capsule. The new formula, which isn't on the website yet, it's going to be updated any day. We haven't released it yet. The new formula is just basically ribose, CoQ10, and copper. Now, MitoSynergy is just a Mito cocktail all by itself. There's no copper in here. MitoSynergy is meant to be taken to complement Mito Activator. Okay, but you take your Mito Activator in the morning, you take your MitoSynergy with lunch. And MitoSynergy does have zinc, so it's very important that if you are taking the energy and the activator, you never take them together. Okay, you always take your copper first. So this is our Mito cocktail, and this has folic, methylfolate, and methyl B12. So we put the methyl versions of it in here, and it's a more advanced Mito cocktail. Now, Mito FM is meant to complement with the activator too. Now, this is more for people that are experiencing discomfort. And so this may help you relax. It may help you with sleepiness. So that's why we always take your Mito FM at dinner. It's magnesium malic acid blend. It's really good for your muscles. Has olive leaf extract. It's kind of been the blend that if you had those myalgia type symptoms, it's a really nice complement for that. Mito Sleep, I actually designed for me. I never sleep, notice the dark circles. I think it's the most powerful sleep on the market. It does not have valerian in it, but it's because we have 5-HTP and it will turn into it, and I like the precursor of it. And I know that, by taking the proper amount, that helps your brain detox. So by having 5-HTP and L-tryptophan, which is the potent precursor for it, it's almost the same but better than taking melatonin. Okay, so this is a melatonin-free sleep, but it is melatonin because it helps your body make its own melatonin instead of bringing in melatonin. And what I've noticed about with the sleep product, when you supplement melatonin, it makes your body, forces your body to create serotonin, and then you're not happy the next day. But if you help your body produce the melatonin naturally by 5-HTP instead, then it doesn't have that effect on me anyways. Okay, we're almost done here. Our newest, coolest, my favorite product is Mito Melt. So the Mito Melt is a rip it and tip it product. It's meant to be, it's a standalone. It's meant to digest in the mouth. I'm going to take one right now. I'm fully addicted to these things. I take them all day long. So here's proper copper, and it just Mito up. Okay. Next one is green tea. Now our green tea is evolving. The new sweeteners in it will be more of a sweetener that everyone will like. But the reason green tea is so important, again, with electron nutrition, the electrons are going to go where they're needed. And the free radicals that are being neutralized isn't the best use of those electrons. The best use is to feed the electron transport chain. Absolutely. So by taking green tea, it's helping our body detox, and it's neutralizing the free radicals. So these electrons from the proper copper aren't going to waste. And hopefully more of them are going to the electron transport chain where we're going to get more use out of them. Now the green tea comes in two forms. We have a plus and a regular. The difference is humic acid. The plus has humic acid. We use Dr. Lobb's humic acid. He's out of California. He's the only humic acid I know on the market that's food grade. So we like that because humic acid is a viral fusion inhibitor. We like to use humic acid in the body and out of the body. So the green tea, when you're mixing it, you have to mix it in warm water, not cold water. If you like to drink cold, mix it with a little warm and then add your cold. Recommend 2 of these a day and right before a meal. Here's our liquid copper. So it's a liposome. So basically, for a quick recap, between the melt, the activator, or the lipo, we have 3 different ways you can supplement copper. Okay? So you're asking, why do you have like a powder and a liquid? Well, the liquid seems to be better nutrition for the optical and the neuro, and this is better for the muscle skeleton. So if we can afford both, we're always going to take both. But if we're on a tight budget, we can only take one, we have to just ask ourselves, are we more focused on muscle skeleton or neuro-optical? Okay? That's the difference basically between the MitoLipo, which is our copper technology inside of a liposome, and a MitoMelt. And then last, we have 3 forms of mud baths. Ooh, glad to get this off my chest. I hate wasting my questions time with it. Super important when you're turning on your cells, when you kickstart your cells, when you activate Cytochrome C, obviously you have more ATP, so your cells are going to be pushing the toxins out into the lymphatic system. And it's so important that you purge that lymphatic system and get your body sweating and do the Mito mud baths or do some form of something to help pull those toxins out, because if you don't, you're basically going to have flu-like symptoms, and that's basically what a Herxheimer reaction is. And basically, I think people who are Herx are people who didn't do proper detoxing. Okay, enough of the product line. Go ahead, next question.
Don't worry, Charlie. We can run a little over. It's no big deal. I'm glad you got all those in because I think people had a lot of questions about your product.
Okay.
How does the copper affect or contribute to other complexes, such as complex 1, which is common dysfunction in autism?
Well, so there's 4 complexes in the electron transport chain, and if complex 1 is being compromised, well, there's something going on other than that, and I would say proper copper could only benefit from it, help the body help itself. You know, that's kind of an interesting question. We're actually doing a cell study with a major university and a children's medical center, and with this particular researcher, he's very well known for mitochondrial dysfunction and autism. And what we're doing is we're introducing the copper directly into the cells. The really cool thing about this particular study is we're not only introducing our coppers, we're introducing market standard copper, and then we're going to have real proof of what I'm saying is true or not. And why I'm on that, you know, I kind of say how copper bad is not, in my opinion, good, but, you know, I'm saying that I don't want to despair anyone's product, and if other people disagree with me and you think copper 2 is okay to put in your body, well, everyone has a right to their own belief. So I do believe that it could help it to answer the question, and we will have a better answer for that question once we finish our cell study. So there's your answer for that one.
Okay. Next question is, why have we always been told to give our son with autism copper-free supplements? Why were we told years ago that he has too much copper and not enough? Hang on, I gotta keep scrolling.
Zinc.
Not enough zinc, yeah.
How did I know that? Okay, that is a great question, and thank you for that question because it brings up a point that I love to make. Number one, we have to understand is that we can be copper toxic and copper deficient at the exact same time. And that's the biggest disconnect I feel out there about copper. So wait a second. You're telling me my son's copper toxic, and now you're telling me to take more copper? Yes, that's exactly right. Because your son's toxic with the wrong form of copper. And that wrong form of copper, copper 2, it's now stuck in his cells, is not going to come out of those cells until you can jumpstart that cell and get it working again. And you're not going to jumpstart that cell and get it working again until you get your electron transport chain working properly, until you feed Cytochrome C proper copper, that copper's stuck in a cell. So you have to fight copper with copper. I'm sorry, the reason you've been told that is I believe our world's confused. I just believe our world's confused. And if it knew better, we wouldn't be putting poison in our bodies. So in a way, that was good advice. Because as far as I'm concerned, there is no copper out there that you should be putting in your body other than Kunima-spur. And Kunima-spur is our brand. That's our word. It stands for copper, neural, muscle, spirit. So that's why, and they just didn't know any better about the zinc, I guess, you know. But when you are taking copper, you need to be taking zinc, just so you know. So there's your answer for that.
Okay. Will this copper help? I have ME, CFS, and pyroluria and gut issues.
Yes, it will help your body help itself. Now, I'm not allowed to talk about that kind of stuff, but yes, it will help your body help itself, and that is yes. Yes.
Okay. If a child has Down syndrome and autism, are the copper needs the same? Don't the Down kids have issues with superoxide dismutase? Sorry, I can't read.
So they're talking about free radicals of oxygen. You still need the copper. There's no getting out of it. And whether your child has Down syndrome or not, they still need proper copper. And, you know, everyone has their belief on what autism is. And my personal belief is autism is toxicity, whether it was from environmental, mother, child, vaccine, whatever. There's toxic cells. We need to get those toxins out of the cells. And the only way to get those toxins out of those cells is to get the cell to push it out. So there's all these iconic foot baths and my mud baths, and these are all great. But if we don't get the toxins out of the cell into the lymphatic system in the first place, what's the point of in doing the rest of the detox? So hopefully that answered that question.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. If a cell has a choice between copper 2-to-1 form and mercury 2-to-1 form, which will it choose?
Well, first of all, mercury is so small, so it's a liquid metal. So the cell doesn't choose mercury ever. It doesn't. It doesn't because it just leaks in there. It gets below 500 Daltons, and when something gets so tiny, then it's able to leach through cell membrane. So the cell is never choosing mercury, in my opinion, nor is it ever choosing copper 2. It doesn't have a choice. The copper is going in through passive transport. To answer that question, the only time I believe the cell is actually making a decision to bring it into the cell is when it's copper 1 and when it's properly binding to a copper chaperone. So that's when the cell has made the decision, and that's when the cell is not confused. So to answer the question, the cell is only going to want copper 1, but it's only going to want copper 1 that's connected to a chaperone. So the other 3, the copper 1, copper 2, mercury, and the copper 2, those are not decisions of the cells. Those are forced upon the cell. Okay, so I want to use a word that's probably inappropriate, but the cell's basically just being, you know, it's being victimized. And when you're being victimized, is that your choice? It's not our choice to be victimized. So the cells would never choose to be victimized. So hopefully that answers that question.
All right, here's one I think a lot of people are probably thinking about right now. Is there a basic autism starter protocol? I'm so confused is the question. Like, so they want you to tell them, like, what if you're going to try this, what should you start with, and, you know, and go from there.
Okay, for our autistic children, number one, I always believe to start with one thing at a time and start very slowly. So if my first thing, if it was for me, I'd start off with Mito Activator or Mito Melt. Okay. My partner Marge is screaming at me right now, and she's saying, "No, start with the mud baths." Okay. Now she could be right. So she purges the lymphatic system. Now me, the reason I start with the copper first is I believe that compliance is the hardest part of this, and when you give somebody a hit of proper copper, they feel so great they know it's working. So I just want everyone to know it's working. But The mud baths start to bring you back towards balance a little bit so you don't get the big pop as you do. So either or, you can turn the cell on or you can start with the mud baths. But once you do one of those two things, always add in the second one. So I say start with the one form of copper, and then your second would be a mud bath. My partner, and I'm sorry to confuse you more, starts with mud and then adds copper. So it depends on really what you think your child needs first, whether you think you want them to detox and then energize, or to energize and then detox. So I like to energize and then detox because I like to kick it out of the cells and pull it out of the body. After that, go ahead.
What would the dose be?
Okay, so for our little people, our MitoMelt, this you could use 1/3 of a packet if he's under 75 pounds. 75 to 125, maybe a half a packet to a whole packet, but start them off easy. Start off. What's nice too about when you use a half a packet is this will literally last, 3 times as long, and it's not cheap, so you can make it last longer. But what a lot of people don't realize is when you have proper copper, a lot is a little. So if I was going to start with the MitoMelt, my guy, I'd probably start him with 1/3, and then I would give him something small to eat afterwards, like a half a piece of toast or a couple of crackers to make sure it doesn't upset his stomach. Then with the MitoLipo, we're going to give them a half a teaspoon, and I would do that again right before a meal. So it just depends if you want to go with the neuro-optical or the muscle skeleton. Now, if you start with both, and if money's no object, I would do it from both directions, and I would do this in the morning, I would do this before lunch, the MitoLipo. Half a teaspoon, a dose, 1/2 a pack.
Thank you. All right. Is there zinc in any of your products? I think you actually mentioned one that had zinc.
Only product of ours that had zinc is MitoSynergy, and again, this is meant to be taken after a copper product, 2 or more hours afterwards. It's meant to be taken with food. So there you go. Yes, one product has zinc, and it complements the activator, or the melt, or the lipo.
Okay. So to be clear, I know you're trying to be conscious for costs, but I just want to clarify it for our people. So they would start with maybe a mud bath or some way to detox. They would, or just have that in place somewhere. They would start with 1/3 of a MitoMelt or whatever the weight size is, move to adding in the MitoLipo, and then maybe MitoSynergy to make sure that you're getting zinc.
Yes, but just add one thing at a time.
Right. Okay. Okay, the next question is, my son is very sensitive to Mito supplements. He gets hyper. Can I know the difference between MitoLipo and MitoActivator? I think you may have.
Sure, but I'll hit it again. Activator has ribose and CoQ10 with it. Lipo doesn't. Plus, lipo is in a lipid, so it will absorb them a lot easier. Lastly, MitoLipo was actually a copper glycine. It's a copper 1 glycine, not a copper 1 B3 like all the other products. So glycine being the smallest amino acid known throughout the universe, plus it's a neurotransmitter, it seems to help out a lot for the neuro-optical as well. So that's the difference. So in glycine's just, the lipo is just copper all by itself. It has a little bit of vitamin C in there, but that's just to keep it stable.
Okay.
Good question.
Where's the connection with Lyme? That's the question.
Okay, well, again, I'm a dietary supplement company. Our medical board doesn't even believe in long chronic Lyme, so maybe we can more discuss that. But first we have to understand, number one, Lyme is bacteria, okay? Copper controls bacteria, period, hands down. The Egyptians have been using copper for over 5,000 years. When the Egyptians were sick 5,000 years ago, all water was drinking through a copper vessel, all food was eaten off a copper plate. So getting your copper into balance alone will get your bacteria under control. It will help your body help itself. That's number one. Number two is your white blood cells do have mitochondria, and when you give Cytochrome C proper copper, when you jumpstart your mitochondria throughout your body, your immune system jumpstarts. So helping the body help itself is real important when you're trying to treat a chronic bacterial underlying infection. The reason why I like doing it with copper rather than an antibiotic is that my body's making those decisions, and they're more natural decisions instead of something just going in there and just killing everything. So hopefully that's a good answer for the connection to Lyme.
Okay, the next question is, can you give us some results of people that have been taking this for a while? What do you typically hear?
Sure. Well, first of all, I can give you some of my own results personally. I'm CDC and IGeneX positive for Lyme's disease. And when I stopped taking it, one of the first things I notice is that I get really moody because I'm a nice person. I'm always happy. Nothing ever gets me upset, but the stupidest things get me upset. Secondly, I start to get really bad joint pain. My muscles start to twitch. I can't concentrate. And I see my blood cells being taken over by the spirochetes. And then when I start to take my proper copper, I watch the blood count of the red blood cells taking over slowly diminish. And once it diminishes, my symptoms are gone. What we hear across the board all over the place to go away is mental clarity, discomfort, and energy levels go through the roof by helping the body help itself. In the autistic world, I'm trying to stay compliant here, but basically we've heard a lot of fast results from mothers, on fast results like within a week or two for some of them, which is unheard of. And it's just helping the body help itself. Our bodies are amazing. If we give our bodies what they need, our bodies can do it all by themselves. We don't need drugs. We just need to give our bodies what they need to help themselves. Hopefully that answered.
Are there other minerals to support good copper absorption?
Yeah, so zinc for sure. Proper mineral throughout your whole diet, just being in balance will help you with copper absorption. So they all matter. There's not one that doesn't. It's the whole puzzle. It all matters. So yes, they all matter. But if I had to say the most important one would be zinc, and that's why we added it to MitoSynergy.
Okay. How do you measure copper toxicity? Like a blood test, a urine test?
That's a great question, and I don't want to answer because I don't know the right answer. And we are looking at everything. We're looking at blood, urine, hair, and I really want to crack the code on this, and I don't feel like I can honestly answer that question perfect. I think they all give us indications, but when a cell becomes, it's kind of like, Dr. Patar showed me one time. He had a glass, and he goes, your cell's toxic, so now you have a lid over your glass, and you're measuring for toxicities, but we still don't know what's going on in the cell. And my totally agree with him, and so my analogy of when a cell becomes toxic is, what we have to understand is our entire body and our individual cells are going to act the same in natural decisions. Our cells, so our individual little cells and our whole body will act the same in natural decisions. So what do I mean by that? So let's just everyone pretend like in your own mind's eye you now just became a single cell of a human being, okay? Now someone just walks into the room. No, 10 people walk in the room where you are right now, and they start throwing hot, sticky golf balls at you. And they're throwing them at you they're throwing like 40 of them at you a second. You have no chance to go stop any of them. All you can do is put your hands in front of your face, and the next thing you know, you're going to curl up, you're going to drop on the floor, you're going to be in a fetal position, and a fetal position covering your vital organs. That's what common sense tells us, right? So what is the first thing that you're going to do when someone walks in the room, gives you a hand, picks you up, slaps an electron on your back? You're going to dust yourself off, right? So you're going to throw all those toxins out. So going back to that testing thing, if the cells aren't running right, how do we test what's in or out of the cells? So unless we're actually going into the cells themselves and doing some type of cell analyzing of the cell, I'm not sure how to answer that question. So I can say, though, when someone is copper deficient, things I notice is fatigue, mental clarity, discomfort, and when we bring their copper back to homeostasis, that all disappears. So, and actually, the last thing on that, if you're going to do this type of testing, you're going to test for, stop chasing it, please. Just take my advice. Get on proper copper for 6 months. Put down the test. Put down the searching for the answer. Give it 6 months. Give me a chance for 6 months. Take proper copper for 6 months. Trust yourself. Do the right decisions on top of that proper copper. Take that proper copper right. Take it by itself. And in 6 months, go test yourself. All these tests you want to take, they're not going to matter anymore because you're going to have balance in your body. And another thing, just to hit on that really fast, is at this last convention I went for Autism 1, Dr. Klinghardt said something in the beginning of his presentation. I loved it. He said exactly what I just said. He said, I don't test my patients for this, that, and the other. He goes, first I give them proper nutrition, I get them running right, and then I go test them to see what's going on. And that just what makes sense to me.
Got it. Okay. Couple more quick questions. One is, if I crave things high in copper like chocolate, does that indicate that I might need proper copper?
Yeah, and I would ask that first question, I would ask that person, are your hands and feet cold? Because normally people who crave stuff like that, they have cold hands and feet, and that's normally an electrolyte deficiency or a mineral deficiency. So, but yes, normally those type of cravings means that you're deficient in something. It could very well be copper.
Okay, there's a question on how long do you need to take the products for? Is this something for life, or will the body repair and you may need to wean off them?
That's a great question. Okay, so depending on the situation. So if you're like a post-stroke or a post-injury, just until your body's healed. But if you have a chronic situation where you've been compromised, you're going to have to take it forever. But the difference is, like for example, a Mito Melt, you wouldn't need to take one a day. You take one every 3 days. Everything that we have is dosed for chronic situations. And then if it's just a maintenance, you need 1/4 to 1/5 that amount. So literally a bottle of MitoSynergy Original could last you like 4 to 5 months. So yes, take it forever once you feel totally better, but just take a little bit. Just take a pinch, but take it forever. Don't ever stop. And the reason I say that is, what is the true problem here? Honestly, we should not be getting copper through supplements. We shouldn't be. We should be getting it through our food. We should be getting it in our plants and in our animals. But the chronic underlying issue, which is so clearly stated in document 246, United States Senate document 246, published in 1939, clearly states that our soils are depleted of vital minerals. So if our plants don't have the copper in the first place, and we're feeding these plants to our animals, they don't have the copper either. So the true copper problem, the deficiency problem, is that we just don't have it in our foods. We have to supplement it. Now that problem's been compounded by the only form of copper I've ever seen is the poison. This stuff that feels like sandpaper now. Okay. So there you go.
Thanks. Okay, and the last question we have for today is there a discount?
Yes, we do give discounts. So first of all, we give discounts. We're giving one to, we're giving a discount. We give financial aid to people, and we also have a discount for the Thinking Moms Revolution. All you have to do is be a member of their organization. How does that work, Helen? Your members are...
Yeah, so if you follow the Thinking Moms Revolution, when you order, I think you type in the code, and then you get the discount.
Okay, and so Helen's welcome to give that code to anybody she sees fit to. We're just not giving it out to the general public, but anyone in that, any mother of any child, because we understand how hard it is and all the money you're paying just to take care of your child, and so we really, our hearts do go out to you. We really do want to help you. We have an automatic code out there. And the other thing is, if you're struggling and you need some help and you want to try this and you're thinking it's too expensive, just send an email to info at MitoSynergy.com. We've never denied anybody financial aid, and we're always, Marge and I, my partner, I have the best partner in the world because passion drives us both, and the two of us probably give away more than we sell. I don't think we've ever sold as much in a year that we've given away in a year between the two of us. So we got to stop doing that because we need the stuff to stick around for a while. But that's the truth.
Sounds like you had big hearts, Charles.
Yeah. Well, it's just when you get that phone call from a mother and they said, I just met my son for the first time.
Aww.
It just makes
Pretty
you
powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you, Charles Barker, for your terrific presentation, and to our audience, thank you also for joining us. If you're interested in purchasing MitoSynergy products, go right to their website, and the coupon code we want you to use is TMR20, which will give you a 20% discount, and it will give you free shipping, okay? So we want to say thank you again to everybody, and especially to you, Charles, and everybody take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.